position after the anishtata stage was there. So now we progress upwards to ruchi. So nishtha was a stage where the attraction to Krishna is a little bit more than attraction to Maya, so it becomes steadier. When Maya is stronger, obviously we're going to have some unsteadiness in practice. So when the attraction to Krishna becomes stronger and attraction to Maya becomes less, then we get what we call nishtha. But it's not too much more, the attraction to Krishna. So when it becomes a little more and the attraction to Maya becomes a little less, then we get ruchi. We get a more positive attraction to Krishna, which visibly manifests. And obviously, practice of bhakti becomes easier because of that. We don't have to force ourselves to do it. So ruchi means taste. So this is actually, we could say, spiritual taste. The Atma has a great relish for serving Krishna, chanting his name, worshipping him, hearing about him, etc. So it's coming from the Atma because of greater attraction and less Maya to interfere with that. Not perfect, but at least it's stronger. So it is stronger than the Maya, and to a sufficient degree where we become quite enthusiastic using our senses and our body to serve the Lord. So the anarthas are less and the bhakti is more. So the two things go on simultaneously. The more the jiva becomes attracted to the Lord, the less it's attracted to Maya. The two things go together. Just like if you have an empty glass and you begin to fill it with water. As you fill it with water, then the emptiness disappears. The air goes out, and once you got the glass full of water, no more air there. So similarly, we fill the soul up with bhakti, then finally there's no room at all for Maya. So that is prema. There's no anarthas left. So the anarthas are automatically destroyed as we increase the bhakti. So there's still anarthas there, but significantly less, so they don't really interfere. So that means we can practice bhakti, continually hearing, chanting, worshipping the Lord, etc., do all sorts of services. And we don't have to force ourselves to do it. We want to do it, and we don't feel tired doing it. We have great enthusiasm to do it. So we become more and more attracted to those activities, and we don't want to do other activities. So this is a very positive sign. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives a little analogy to the sickness in the liver. I guess we can call it jaundice. Maybe hepatitis or something. So when the liver gets affected, then it affects our taste. And sweet things like sugar become distasteful to us. So that's our condition in the material world. Krishna is naturally sweet. But if we're covered by Maya, then it's distasteful. We can't pick up the sweetness of it. At the same time, for the liver, sugar is also the cure for the sickness of the liver. At the same time, you don't want to take it. Similarly, service to Krishna is the cure for the disease of Maya. But if we're covered by material energy, we don't want to do it. It's the ultimate cure, but we refuse to take it. So this is something like that. So our condition is something like the diseased liver. So, if we get good knowledge and we have faith, then even though we don't have taste as such for the Lord because we're covered by Maya, but we got that little faith in us, at least with that conviction, we can begin the process because our intelligence tells us that this is good for you. Just as a person who is sick, he doesn't want to take the sugar, but if the doctor says, authority says, this is the cure, it doesn't taste good, but it's the cure, then he'll take it. If he has faith in the doctor. If he doesn't have faith in the doctor, then he won't follow his advice. If he has faith in the doctor, then he'll follow. So if one has faith in the scriptures and faith in the devotees, then the person with faith will follow those instructions in spite of the fact that he doesn't have much taste. So, by following the instructions, the sick patient, he takes the sugar, then he starts getting cured. And as he starts getting more cured, then he can begin to taste the sweetness of sugar. The more he tastes it, then the more he's willing to take it. And you don't have to force him anymore. So the more he gets cured, the more taste he has, and then the more spontaneously he will take the medicine. So similarly with bhakti, we begin with the faith, and we still have to force ourselves and struggle a little bit. When we get to nishta, then at least it's a little better. And when we get to ruchi, then we're actually getting the taste out of bhakti. So then we don't have to have anyone force us to do it. We want to do it. We get the taste for bhakti, and spontaneously we start doing it. So, in this way, then the cure comes much quicker, because we have no fatigue, and we're doing the process of bhakti. So we take more of the sugar, so to speak, more and more sugar, like that, without any hesitation. So like that, a person on ruchi, he does more and more bhakti, and it's not tiring to him. So therefore, quickly he can advance and get rid of the sickness of Maya. So in this way, when we get that significant increase of bhakti and the anarthas are much less, then we get ruchi and we can advance quite quickly. Now, like we had we have the different types of ruchi here. So some ruchi is dependent on the material elements, like if we think that, let's say, kirtan, okay, the singer's not good, the melody's not good, then we're not attracted to it, like that. So that's external, of course. So there's a ruchi that does not depend upon the externals at all. It depends on the very process itself, and we can say the heart of the devotee, like chanting or whatever like that. So then the devotee who's attracted to that has real ruchi. So one is the superficial one is the deeper ruchi. So that's the sign of the person has purity of heart. So what are the characteristics of a person in ruchi? He laments his previous condition. Now that he's got taste, he realizes all of the attraction to Maya was useless, and he laments that previous condition. So sometimes we see the Vaishnava authors, the poets, they will, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he'll lament his, so long I've been in Maya and attracted to material things and whatever like that. But that's because they're on a higher level and they realize the insignificance of everything in the material world. So they lament how long they've been in Maya or how many lives they've wasted in the material world. So, hearing and chanting is easily performed constantly. And association of devotees also is very important. The more one advances in devotional service, the more one relishes the association of devotees. And we see even in prema and in the highest levels of prema that longing for association is there. So we see in the Bhagavatam, for instance, the highest gopis, the devotees are the gopis. So they're not isolated. They're in groups. And even they're separate groups, but even then, they also unite together. So in the Ras Leela, when Krishna disappeared, and then they found out, okay, Radha's gone off with Krishna, and then some of the gopis are criticizing and this and that. Then they find that Radha's also there, and Krishna's gone. So at that point, they give up all their separate ideas, and they unite together. And then they don't know what to do, so they go down to the Jamuna River. And what do? They all do kirtan. And then Krishna appears. So they're all, spontaneously associating with each other and hearing and chanting together, even on the highest level. So, therefore, as the devotee progresses, then he constantly hearing and chanting and associating with devotees, and rejects material engagements. He's not interested in material life anymore at all. Takes refuge in the Dhamma. As I mentioned this morning, the Dhamma is one of the primary influences, one of the 5 major types of bhakti living in the Dham. So the environment of the Dham is very, very conducive for devotional advancement. So a person in ruchi stage goes to the Dhamma. Like that. So that's the stage of ruchi. So, 6th shower, Asakti, attachment. So, we had the little seed is planted in the heart, which is favorable with faith. And it sprouts up from the seed. We get the little plant with the leaves coming out, like the Kleshagni Subhada. And then eventually we get a little bud appearing. That bud is Asakti. When it flowers, that is like bhava. When it turns into a fruit, that is prema. So here we're getting a precursor of bhava, the flower. We get the bud of the flower. So it's quite close, quite similar. It's almost at bhava stage. So this is the bud of the flower. So ruchi, in ruchi we have attraction and we have a taste, but it's a taste for the process, bhakti, bhajana, chanting, hearing, and it becomes constant. In asakti, Krishna becomes the object of taste. We're focusing in the bhajan on Krishna. We're chanting Krishna's name, and then in the name we're attracted to Krishna. So the attraction to Krishna becomes more prominent in the asakti stage. So in ruchi, there is some effort to withdraw the mind from material objects and concentrate on Krishna. And in asakti, it becomes spontaneous attraction to Krishna, concentration on Krishna. So Maya becomes much less of a problem here. Now, because it's very close to bhava, then we get a sudden appearance of the Lord in the heart, like a reflection. It's not the actual form of Krishna which appears in bhava, but it's almost like this, a momentary flash, like a little reflection in the heart. So as a person in bhava can get that experience of the Lord, a slight experience of the Lord in asakti stage. Which means that his eyes are getting spiritualized. He's developing spiritual senses at that point. What are the characteristics? Attached to devotees and hearing, as in ruchi stage, hearing and chanting, etc., and attachment to devotees. And now, because of the prominence of Krishna in his sadhana, he sees everything in terms of Krishna, how everything is related to the Lord. So there's, of course, some very poetic descriptions in the Madhurya Kadambini of the devotee on this stage. He's wandering around in the forest and he's relating everything to the Krishna. Sees a deer in the forest, and then he says, which way is the deer going? Is he going this way, that way? Is it a good omen, is it a bad omen? Is he telling me where Krishna is, like this? So he sees everything in relation to the Lord. And he's always thinking of how he can attain the Lord. What's the best method of attaining the Lord? And develops a great longing for the Lord. When he reaches this stage, of course, as in ruchi itself, disinterested in material affairs. Because of that, normal people will criticize him. And they say he's crazy, or he's not doing his duties, he's being adharmic. He's not following proper dharma by neglecting material affairs, neglecting family, rejecting society, etc. So he'll get the criticism of material society at this point. But he ignores it. So that's his position. Yeah? So he simply wants to get closer and closer to the Lord, desire to serve the Lord directly. That's his ambition. So this is the stage of attachment to the Lord. Where did my cursor go here? Where's the cursor? Okay. Cursor has disappeared on me. Where is it gone? It's on that one. Oh, that's what's happened. Now, how do I get it? How do I get it here? Let's see here. Will this do it? No, we go here. Here. No? Will it bring that up at all? Will this come up on the screen at all? No, it won't. Yeah, I think I got to get rid of this one. And get rid of this one. And then go back here. Now will it come up? Still won't come up.
You can drag them.
Huh?
Drag this one to it.
Oh, there's one of those crazy things happening. Okay. Anyway, just get through the next file. Number 7. 7th file.
Number 7, Maharaj?
Yeah. And then I think when you press this and get the slideshow, oh no, we're back there, okay, get slideshow, and then get beginning, then it'll work. The beginning, press on this one.
This one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So Asakti was there, then that was the bud, then we get bhava or rati. This is the flower. So rati or bhava actually refers to sthayi bhava. That means your emotional relationship with the Lord. It's actually called, we have 2 types of anusilanam, or cultivation of a relationship with Krishna. One is cheshta rupa. That's the activities using your senses, like the eye, the nose, the hands, the feet, which is normally what we do in sadhana. The other type of anusilana is called bhava rupa sadhana, activities, or anusilana. So that manifests on the bhava stage. That means your emotional relationship with the Lord. It may take 5 forms: shanta, dasya, sakya, vatsalya, madhurya. It's not rasa. It's one of the elements of rasa. It combines with 4 other elements, and then shanta rati will become shanta rasa, or dasya rati becomes dasya rasa. So basically the rati exists here, but it's not really combined fully with 4 other elements. But this is a primary element, the emotional relationship with the Lord. So this is also a type of anusilanam. So this manifests at this stage. At this stage, one gets a vision of the Lord. One can see the form of the Lord. In Asakti stage, there was like a flash, almost the Supreme Lord, like a little flash of it. Here, one actually sees the form of the Lord, which means that we develop our spiritual body with our spiritual eyes to the extent that we can actually see the Lord. And if this bhava appears, then avidya gets uprooted. So we had the different stages of klesha, and we had avidya at the top. That was the root cause of, raga, dvesha, mamata or ahankara, etc. So, bhava stage, all that gets uprooted. So in other words, one gets to the stage of liberation here. One surpasses liberation, because all the karmas and the avidya are gone. So, but of course, one of the characteristics of bhava stage is the person regards liberation or mukti as useless because he sees Krishna. So he's got ananda rather than simply absence of material suffering from liberation. And the other quality, that's a moksha lugadakriti, bliss of serving the Lord overpowers mere liberation. So the other quality that appears here is sudurlabha. There's a rare attainment. What is the rare attainment? One gets to see the Lord. A person doing karma yoga does not see the Lord. A person doing jnana does not see the Lord. A person doing yoga also does not see the Lord. So it's very rare for them or impossible for others to see the Lord. But a person following bhakti follows properly. Then when he gets to bhava stage, he sees the Lord. So in that sense, very rare. Others who follow other processes can't get to this stage of seeing the Lord and developing that relationship with the Lord. So once the devotee develops a sthayi bhava for the Lord, then Krishna starts getting very attracted. Of course, he's attracted to all bhakti. We saw in Nishtha itself that the Lord appears in the heart and he destroys the anarthas. So definitely the Lord is attracted even to people doing sadhana. But in bhava then, the Lord becomes even more attracted to that person. And the devotee becomes more attracted to the Lord. So in Asakti stage there was attraction. That means attraction for the Lord. In a bhava stage it's more attraction. So in terms of Sanskrit, it's called mamata, possessiveness of the Lord. We have greater possessiveness of the Lord here in the stage of bhava. So as I said, he can see the Lord. His spiritual senses develop. He can smell the Lord. The fragrance of the Lord or the fragrance of his garlands, etc. He can hear the flute of the Lord or the voice of the Lord or the ankle bells of Krishna. He gets the touch of the Lord. The Lord may touch him also. And taste the Lord even. The gopis get to taste the Lord because they kiss him. So these gradually develop. The spiritual senses are gradually manifest, and one can experience all these different senses. So naturally he has a spiritual body because he has to serve the Lord. Simultaneously he's got the material body, but he's not paying attention to the material body anymore at all. It goes on by the will of the Lord, but he's not really caring for that body, caring about eating and sleeping or whatever like that. He's more operating in a spiritual body at this point. We see instance like in Lord Chaitanya himself, who's acting like a devotee. In certain cases, he was just not aware of his body at all. He was completely out of his body. So in Asakti stage, even then, people criticize. Because the devotee is not interested in normal social activities. In bhava stage, it becomes more extreme. His activities become completely contrary. Or even looks like insanity. Because of absorption in the Lord, because of sattvika bhavas, ecstatic symptoms, etc. So, subhada began to manifest in sadhana stage, that is, spiritual qualities. So they become more prominent here. Krishna has 64 spiritual qualities, so the devotee can start developing his 50 qualities. So these manifest prominent in this stage also. And as I said, the possessiveness of the Lord is there. So, so two types of bhava. If we do Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, we develop a bhava influenced by that Vaidhi bhakti. it's a little bit weaker in strength and weaker in spontaneity, less intense. And the main obstacle here is we see the Lord as the Lord with great reverence. So therefore, it's a little bit weaker. And if we've done Raganuga Bhakti, which is cultivating a relationship like the people of Vrindavan, then it's stronger, more spontaneous, more intense. And we don't see the Lord as the Lord with reverence. We see him as a friend. So that's the difference. So if we look within, like Chaitanya Charitamrita there's a greater emphasis upon Raganuga Bhakti as a sadhana because it leads to the realization of Krishna in Vrindavan. If we do Vaidya Bhakti, we can realize Krishna, but we may be Dwarka Krishna or Krishna in Aishwarya Goloka, which is like Vrindavan, but Krishna's a cowherd boy, and we have Nanda and Yasoda and the gopis, but they see Krishna as Supreme Lord. So there's a little bit of a lesser, less intense relationship in the different rasas there with Krishna. So therefore there's an emphasis on Raganuga. So then bhava, as a result of the two different sadhanas, we get to bhava stage, so we realize Krishna slightly differently. And the different tastes are there. We get Shanta Rati, which is generally not cultivated by the devotees because it's rather neutral. A little bit weaker than the others. Then we get Dasya, or Prita Rati, which is, Vishnu Chakravarti compares it to grape juice. And if you get Sakya, he says like sugarcane juice. So it's a different taste, but they're both sweet. Huh? If you get Vatsalya Rati, it's like jackfruit juice, sweeter. And if you're Madhurya, it's like mango juice. So it's all sweet, but there's different tastes involved. Huh? So of these, the Madhura Rati is considered to be superior. Huh? It's the sweetest of all those different tastes. But some people may prefer the other juice. Just as here, some people like mango juice, some people prefer grape juice, some people prefer orange juice or whatever like that. So spiritual world also, different devotees prefer different ratis, and from that develops their rasa. So we get the other elements that produce rasa at this stage. The sthayi bhava is bhava. We get vibhava. That means devotee and Supreme Lord. These are the aspects of vibhava. And in the Lord, we get certain things which stimulate our love, such as Krishna's peacock feather, his age, his color, the sound of his flute, etc. So that's called vibhava. Sattvika bhavas, that's like crying and fainting, etc. Anubhavas. These are conscious actions like serving the Lord, chanting, dancing, playing with Krishna, cooking for Krishna. Anubhavas. And Vyabhachari bhavas. These are minor emotions like worry or fear, etc. So sthayi bhava is that main thing like Shanta, Dasya, etc. So they all mix together. And they cause the rasas. Shanta rasa, Dasya rasa, Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, and Ujjwala or Madhurya rasa. That's the result of the mixture of these 5 elements here. So though it's there, it's not at its full strength in bhava. It reaches its full strength in prema. So one can establish a relationship with any form of the Lord, like Vishnu or Rama or Nrsimha or Vamana, and one can get to bhava and prema, and so the rasa manifests. But Krishna is the personification of rasa, Akila Rasa Mrita Murti. Therefore, the most intense rasas take place with Krishna. And the greatest variety of rasa takes place with Krishna. Just as the ocean is the personification of all water as compared to lakes or rivers. So, bhava is the preliminary experience of rasa. All the elements are there, they combine to some degree, but not at its most intense. So therefore, it's preliminary rasa. Okay. So now we got to get to the last one here. Okay, eighth or prema. Okay. Now this is the fruit, final result. So this is also described in Chaitanya and Charitamrita, where it says you get the seed of bhakti and then you water it and it grows up and grows up and grows up and then it goes out of the material world, pierces through the universe, goes to the spiritual world, and gets to the lotus feet of Krishna. Then it bears its fruit. And then what happens? We eat the fruit and we taste the rasa. So this is the final result of the tree growing, is its fruit. However, on this special tree, the tree of bhakti, or the lati, the creeper of bhakti, we still get the leaves, we still get the buds, we still get the flower, as well as the fruit. They all exist together. So in other words, the results of sadhana are there. There's kleshagni and subhada are there. Moksha luguta kriti is there. Sudurlabha is there. Plus we get some extra things and prema. One, of course, is the intense bliss one gets. There is bliss in bhava stage because we can see and directly serve the Lord. But because it's preliminary rasa, if we get to prema, then in prema the ananda is much greater. Rasa is greater, ananda is greater. So, the activities which we have done in sadhana, hearing, chanting, etc., they continue in prema. We don't give up those activities. There's freedom from suffering and bestowal of good qualities. That was the subhada. So they manifest fully here in prema. So, there was a bud in Asakti, in which we get very spontaneous attraction to Krishna and all the activities of bhakti. And then in bhava stage, the flower came, and we get these different things manifesting, anubhavas, staya bhavas, sattvika bhavas, and sanchari or vyabhachari bhavas manifest. And so rasa begins and Krishna appears. That's bhava stage. So when we get to prema stage, concentrated bliss, whatever bliss was there in bhava stage becomes more and more intense. In Nectar Devotion, it says that bhava is like one ray of the sun of prema. So in comparison, it's very little. But still, that one ray of prema in bhava stage is much more than the bliss of Brahman. So, concentrated bliss, Sandrananda. Here, Krishna becomes most attracted to the devotee. He falls under the control of the devotee in prema. That's Krishna Karshani, the sixth quality of bhakti mentioned in Nectar Devotion. There's possessiveness of Krishna in bhava stage. There's intense possessiveness of Krishna in prema. And a greed for Krishna which overcomes all obstacles. That's the definition of prema, that overcomes all obstacles. So even if Krishna appears momentarily, one gets great greed for Krishna. Krishna appears in all the senses, and he even does that simultaneously. So one can experience his beauty with the eye, fragrance with the nose, melody, the flute or his voice with the ear, youthfulness and tastiness, audorja and karuna. increase of longing for the Lord and bestowal of more bliss. Okay, oops. So we have a direct meeting with the Lord. Of course, one sees the Lord in bhava stage, but it may be a very temporary meeting, as in the case of Narada Muni. He saw the Lord once in bhava stage, and then the Lord said, I'm not going to appear to you anymore. And that way you get longing for me, more intense longing. So a direct meeting with the Lord is more constant in prema. So he reveals his fragrance from the nose, he reveals voice to the ear, he reveals touch to the devotee, revealing his youthfulness. He reveals taste for those in Madhurya Rasa. Audorja. Everything appears at once, simultaneously. In all the senses we experience Krishna. So not just individually, but all at once. So that's even more intense in terms of bliss. And then he gives Kripa Shakti, so that the devotee can actually experience everything of the Lord. So we have all the senses simultaneously being able to access the Lord and experience Him. And it's done because of the Kripa Shakti of the Lord. Otherwise it's impossible. So, if we look at the nectar devotion in the later parts, when it describes the different rasas, it describes them in two ways. Meeting, then there's certain symptoms, and separation for each of the different rasas. So like dasya in meeting the Lord, and dasya in separation, or sakya meeting, sakya separation, or madhurya rasa meeting or separation like that. So, because they have their own unique qualities in these two phases. So, when the devotee meets the Lord, then obviously he gets the highest bliss. And in separation, the devotee gets the highest pain. But this is not material pain at this stage. It is actually part of the prema itself. So it's described that the gopis, they experience highest bliss, and within that, the highest pain of separation. But that separation, that pain of separation is part of the bliss, and within that they feel bliss itself. So at a certain stage, the devotee, because he's got a spiritual body and a spiritual senses, and he's seeing the Lord and serving the Lord, he just continues to serve Him. And then the body just remains here, and he's just out of his body completely, without even knowing it. That's how he describes the transition to the spiritual world. So suddenly he's just in the spiritual world because he's serving the Lord, and he's just completely oblivious of his material body. And then that becomes his eternal position. So we had the different stages, which were explained in the different chapters, from Shraddha all the way up to Prema. And Prema is the final result. But even then, Prema has higher divisions. It's a general thing to distinguish it from Rati or Bhava, where we get the full rasa. But even then we have higher and higher intensities. So Sneha is one, and then Man is another, and Pranaya and Raga, Anuraga and Mahabhava. So these manifest more prominently in different rasas. So as we go to higher rasas, the more intense stages manifest. So for instance, Sneha, which means greater affection. So Shanta rasa generally won't show this stage at all. And then we get to Dasya, so some Sneha may be there. Man is actually a condition which manifests generally in Madhurya rasa, which means anger at Krishna. So we see the gopis sometimes get angry at Krishna. Generally, those in Dasya rasa cannot get angry at the Lord because they're simply serving Him. Pranaya, which is very familiar. So this manifests in Sakya rasa because equals. And then, of course, also in Madhurya rasa is there. Raga manifests in Vatsalya quite prominently. And it's said that Yasoda is constantly on the stage of raga. So even though one is full of sorrow, immediately when there's an appearance of Krishna, there's great happiness. And that devotee does anything for the Supreme Lord, even giving up his own life. And when we get to Madhurya Rasa, then Anuraga becomes very, very prominent. That means ever fresh at every moment, that love. And then Mahabhava will appear in the gopis, some of the gopis. So that's the highest stage of all and the most intense. So we get from bhava to prema, sneha, man, pranaya, raga, anuraga, and mahabhava, more and more intense forms. And also it generally follows the different rasas from dasya, sakya, vatsalya, and then madhurya. We get anuraga and mahabhava. Anuraga, I think, can also exist in the queens of Dwarka, but they don't get to mahabhava. It's only particular gopis in Vrindavan to get to the mahabhava stage. So, because the human body cannot experience those higher stages, they're not discussed in this work. So, the last part concerns attachment. We have material attachment. So everybody in the material world is covered by ignorance, and they have possessiveness. I want this, or I want that, or this is mine, etc. And they have the sense of I, ahanta. I exist, this is my me, this is my body is me, etc. This results in bondage. If we destroy that ahankara and the attachments, then we get liberation, moksha. Bhakti cultivates another type of ahankara. I'm the servant of Krishna, and I become attached to Krishna. So we never give up the sense of I. The ahanta remains, but it's I am servant of Krishna, not I am the body. And we develop attachment to Krishna. Krishna is mine. Instead of these objects belong to me, Krishna becomes mine. So it's quite different from moksha, where there is this no I, no possessiveness at all. And it's different from the ahankara in the material world, which is directed towards material objects for oneself. So we have a sense of I and possessiveness directed towards Krishna. And when that becomes very strong, we get prema. So, we can trace that possessiveness and attraction to Krishna through the different stages of bhakti from Shraddha onwards. And we can also trace the attachment to matter. So they work inversely. The more attraction we have for matter, the less attraction we have for Krishna. The more attraction we have for Krishna, the less attraction we have for Maya. So the whole process of bhakti is to increase our attraction for the Lord, and consequently, the attraction for Maya becomes less and less and less and less. So in the beginning stage, we have Shraddha. So attachment to matter is very great. We've got a lot of anarthas. Attachment to Krishna is gandha matra, a slight fragrance only. Little particle of attraction. So we get sadhu sangha, and it becomes a little stronger. It's a fragrance, but a little bit more of a fragrance, a little more trace. We start doing bhajana kriya. Matter decreases a little bit. It's not so extreme, but it's still pretty strong. And attachment to Krishna, ekadesha vartini, means in one place, a little bit, small percentage of attraction to Krishna, but by and large, more attraction to matter, purna. As we progress in bhakti, matter, attraction to matter, and we do anartha, nivritti, etc. through our bhajana, prayiki, which means a little bit less than purna. It decreases, the attraction to matter decreases. And when we get to nishta, then it's kind of equal. We have many attractions to Maya, but we also get many attractions to Krishna. And when we get to ruchi, then Krishna becomes stronger, attraction to Krishna is stronger, praiki. And attachment to matter becomes ekadesha, a little bit only. So we have more, stronger attraction to Krishna than to matter. We get to Asakti, then attraction to Krishna is purna, very, very strong, and attraction to Maya is gandha, a little fragrance only. We get to bhava, we have extreme attraction to Krishna and a very, very slight trace of Maya there. We get to prema, then no matter attraction at all, and most strongest attraction to Krishna. So as the attraction to Krishna grows and grows and grows, and we possess Krishna more and more, the attraction to Maya gets less and less and less. Kind of like that. Automatically, as the increase of one takes place, the attachment to Maya decreases. And in terms of meditation or concentration of the mind on the Lord, we have a similar type of thing. As we go through the stages, then we can concentrate on the Lord more and more. And bhajana kriya, temporary concentration on the Lord. Nishta, we still have material traces or distractions there. Ruchi, we can meditate on the Lord, concentrate for long periods of time. Asakti, very deep concentration on the Lord. And bhava stage, then the Lord actually appears within the mind. And in prema, He's right in front of us. So in this way, of course, the meditation, we can't call it real meditation at the point of prema in one sense, because it's all spiritual at that point. The mind is not even operating. We have spiritual mind operating then with the Supreme Lord. But anyway, this is the way in which the Lord gradually appears. First internally, and then directly before the person in prema. Okay, so that's it. Yeah, fine. Okay. Hare Krishna. No. Actually, I'm hot.
So there are different stages. You describe there are different qualities which become manifest. But while we are doing our sadhana bhakti, the stress is that we should also be cultivating these qualities as we are practicing during our lower bhajan kriya stage.
Wow.
For example, not having the desire for liberation.
Yeah.
That exhibits in, I think, bhava or
Yeah.
Asakti stage.
Yeah.
But in the beginning also we are told that we should not have the desire for liberation.
Mhm.
So are we like jumping the gun by having such desires?
Well, at least we have knowledge in the previous stages of sadhana, which is good for us, because otherwise we may start mixing desire for liberation with the bhakti, then it becomes gyan misra bhakti, and that weakens the bhakti. So if we're going Sudha bhakti, then we have to reject that as a desire. Now, of course, we may not reject it completely, but at least we know that it's the wrong thing to do, so we don't cultivate that desire for liberation within our bhakti itself. When we get to bhava stage, then automatically, because of realizing the Lord, then the desire for liberation is experienced as useless. We surpass liberation. So it becomes an experience at that stage. It's not that we have to think about, oh, should I reject liberation? No, automatically, because we see Krishna, liberation is despised, regarded as useless. So it's an experience at bhava stage. But we do have to have that knowledge in sadhana so that we don't get mixed bhakti.
So sometimes because of hearing these qualities, we feel naturally become manifest in the later stages. But we are aware of those qualities. But sometimes it may happen that we may judge ourselves on those qualities, and it may cause the depression.
Well, we can say more, we should think of it as an aspiration. Because even like pure bhakti, we're supposed to do pure bhakti, but obviously we're not pure. And we're not pure until we get to prema. Even in bhava stage, it's not absolutely pure. But we always say you have to do pure bhakti to get to prema. So our aspiration is pure bhakti. And when we're consciously doing bhakti, then we don't try to mix material desires or desire for liberation in it. But We do have anartas still, all the way up into bhava stage. So, but our ideal is, to reach that stage of absolute pure bhakti. So it becomes an ideal rather than expecting us to reach that stage of purity in sadhana.
One stage, you say that we will attain the spiritual body. So,
Mhm.
would that mean material body and spiritual body could coexist?
Yeah, in bhava and prema, until one gives up the body. Yeah. But they become, at a certain stage, incompatible. Because one prefers to live in the spiritual body rather than the material body. So one neglects the material body. And at a certain stage, one just goes off in the spiritual body and leaves the material body here. Because the material body is a restriction. Yeah?
Present state, the spiritual body, the eye of the spiritual body, is it covered up or what is it?
Well, we can say it has to be grown. Just like we have the idea here of the seed, and we cultivate the seed, and it sprouts, and it grows leaves, and it grows bud, and then it grows flower, then it grows fruit. So basically it's a certain type of cultivation will produce spiritual eye. If we don't do that cultivation, we can get rid of the coverings, as we do in jnana, get rid of the ignorance, and we're left with the Atma. But then there's nothing to see, because we're not cultivating a relationship of trying to serve the Lord, or see the Lord, or glorify the Lord. So you don't need senses. So we're not cultivating senses at all for Brahman realization. So you get moksha, no senses develop. Atma is there, and he's simply aware of existence and not even seeing any particular Brahman or anything. He is Brahman. So senses aren't necessary for that. So the cultivation of jnana does not manifest senses at all. We do bhakti, then we're developing a relationship with the Lord. So in relation to that, then naturally spiritual senses will develop so that we can see the Lord, associate with the Lord, glorify the Lord, touch the Lord, etc. So there's more or less a necessity, we can say, that these things would develop in the spiritual body in order to serve the Lord. Otherwise, how can we serve Him? If we can't see Him or perceive Him or serve Him, then why would we, what will we do? So our whole aspiration is to serve the Lord eternally, so therefore the Lord endows us with spiritual body, with spiritual senses. So it's directly related with the cultivation of bhakti. If we don't do the bhakti, those senses will not develop.
One ruchi presentation in the last 2 days. We requested you come back again to see the presentations to be nice. My question really is two parts. The first part is that you talk about the gradation of sadhana to prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a gradation, that is not a clear cut, that will come between bhava and prayer. As they develop more prayer, the gradation increases like this. So it's not a quantum jump between power. This is a gradation that goes up. So I guess that as they develop, they become more and more toward prayer, then the power nature goes with it. That's my first
The? What comes?
The nature of how
Bhava.
the power
Yeah.
goes as to develop more prayer. So it's a gradation, as I understand it. It's not a clear-cut thing.
Well, it's a gradation. We can say everything is a gradation. We do bhajana, kriya, anartana, vitti, starts, and it continues, anartas get destroyed, and when you get to nishta, a certain amount of anartas are destroyed, and the attraction to Krishna becomes stronger. That's why I more or less put it as some sort of graph in here. So it's not a sudden thing. It keeps going on and on and on, and we can, this for our convenience, we can divide it up into stages like this, where the attraction for Krishna is more and more and more, and the attraction to Maya is less and less and less. So that we get to Nishtets, attraction to Krishna is slightly more. We get to Ruchi, attraction for Krishna is more. And then Asakti is even more. And then Bhava, the Lord manifests Himself. So that's a little bit distinct. But then that continues into prema. You have the bhava with the sthayi bhava, etc., and the elements of rasa are there. So that all continues into prema, but it becomes more intense. So we can say bhava and prema are actually the same thing, but one is called the, bhava is called the bud of prema. So it's a continuation, a direct continuation, but much more intense. And what's the distinction? Obviously, the rasa is full and the ananda is sandra ananda as compared to ananda. Intense ananda as compared to normal ananda.
You mentioned that time you reach prema, you look at the spiritual body and you have to leave the spiritual body.
Yes.
So I was thinking in my mind that an example that I was thinking of, that is called Bhanu Maharaj in 1996, when he was talking about the paths of Jagannath. He left the body in the very state where, would you say that was like a very high level of prema that developed that you couldn't stay any longer in the physical body and it would be?
Oh, yeah. So I think it was the question. So, yeah, Lord Chaitanya's experience is actually, well, he came to the material world to illustrate to us the highest levels of prema and obviously communicate to us Mahabhava and the experience of Radha and Madhurya Rasa, etc. So, of course, he's also Supreme Lord. So he's not an ordinary devotee. He's taking the guise of a devotee, but he's also Supreme Lord. So therefore, he manifests the mood of Radha. So Mahabhava is there. But it's much greater than anybody else's because he's also Supreme Lord. So his involvement with the Krishna, etc., as a devotee is that, he's completely absorbed in that. And he goes through the most extreme symptoms, more than anyone else could possibly do. So he has sattvika bhavas, which are no one else can have. So crying takes place, but we see that the tears shoot out of his eyes as if from a squirt gun, forcibly. Or he sweats, but blood comes out instead. Yeah? Or he had these symptoms where he'd faint, and then his body would contract, and his arms would disappear into his body. Or in other cases, the joints would detach from his body. So this is like unheard of ecstatic symptoms, very extreme ecstatic symptoms and separation from the Lord. So in other words, he demonstrated the most extreme symptoms of separation from Krishna as a devotee.
One question from yesterday's classes. Someone asked me that someone goes in a fraud against someone, and that person who the fraud is going to get has left his body. How shall we go and apologize?
Okay, yeah. What happens if someone leaves their body but we've committed an offense to get the person and we can't apologize them now? Well, the only solution to that is actually internally we can regret the offense and then internally apologize to him. That's all we can do in that case. And continually chant. That's all we can do. Previous life, yeah. Narottam Das and others, yeah.
So I was just thinking, if the conditioned souls made statements like they were saying, I was not sort of fallen and I've done so many sinful activities, it makes sense. Bhaktivinoda Thakur never engaged in sinful activities. He never engaged in sinful activities. How could he say something like that?
Okay, so how can elevated devotees refer to a previous life, a fallen previous life? Well, even the highest devotees, they may not refer to a previous life, but they also consider themselves the lowest. And the higher you go, the more they feel the lowest. So Sanatana Goswami explains that the gopis are the highest, but they have the most dainya. They feel themselves in the lowest position, the most unqualified to serve the Lord, more than anybody else. So that's the peculiar nature of prema. The higher you go, the more fallen you think you are. So therefore you can attribute everything to yourself, that you're the most fallen and most greatest aparadi and whatever. in spite of the fact that one is in the highest position. Right? So, therefore, it's not uncommon for devotees who are within the material world to refer to their fallen existence and how sinful they are or how much offensive they are, like that. I'm the most, sinful person, therefore deliver me first, So, it's a common thing for any devotee in the material world to do, especially as they get higher and higher in their relationship with the Lord. Even though they may not be, people in the material world, they may be nityasiddhas, they can still refer to themselves like that.
I understand, at least theoretically, that they would consider themselves fallen, but they often say very specific things like, I engaged in such and such sinful activities, but no, they never did. So how could they say something like that? Like being fallen is in a general sense.
Well, because they put themselves in the worst position, that they're the lowest person in the material world, so therefore if they're the lowest person in the material world, then they would be the most sinful and commit the worst activities. So they can attribute that to themselves, even though it may not be true in the literal sense.
Explaining that difference between Vairi Bhakti and RadhaGopinath Bhakti, that in RadhaGopinath Bhakti you have a sense of friendship with the Lord, whereas in Vairi Bhakti it is more awe and reverence, and therefore it is deeper. So, for sadhakas, how the sadhakas are expected to conduct themselves in terms of this expectation to take Krishna as a friend. So we are supposed to do Vairi Bhakti. So when is the stage when RadhaGopinath Bhakti?
So when is the stage when Raganuga Bhakti would start? So there's no particular stage that automatically happens. One could just do Vaidhi Bhakti, and through that get to bhava and go to prema. And if you go to bhava and prema, then you have reverence for the Lord and see Krishna as the Lord or other forms of the Lord, like Narasimhadev or Rama, and we see them as the Lord. If you get association with persons practicing Raganuga, that's the main impetus for practicing Raganuga. And the other is, of course, if we hear the pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan from the 10th canto and other Goswami literatures, then that acts as an impetus to follow after them and develop a similar type of mood. So that's what Raganuga is, following after the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. So by hearing, we get that attraction, then we become qualified for the path of Raganuga. And it's usually through association with devotees who have that attraction already, then we get influenced by them, we get inspired to follow.
Maharaj, you mentioned Aishwarya. Where exactly is that situated in spiritual?
It's like in Brahma Samhita, there in the initial verses before the prayers of Brahma. It describes Goloka as a yantra, actually, with the syllables of the mantra in the middle, etc., and the six-pointed star there, etc., and then it says it's a rectangular area outside of that. And so that's the Aishwarya Goloka. So it's still Krishna as a cowherd boy, but there, Mother Yasoda and Nanda, they're also there, gopis are there, friends are there, but it's mixed with seeing Krishna with reverence as Supreme Lord. So it's a mixture of Aishwarya with Goloka itself. That's outside of the main Goloka, which is called Gokul. Just the outer edges of Gokul is Aishwarya Goloka. So if you practice Vaidhi Bhakti for Krishna as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan, and you continue that, then you could get to bhava, and you can get to prema, but then you still see Krishna as, with reverence as Supreme Lord, then you go to that Aishwarya Goloka. If you switch to Raganuga, then you go to Gokul in the center.
What is that spiritual body when you say spiritual body? The Vedic compare the soul is 1/10 of that, one by 10,000 power.
Mhm.
The head. So spiritual body is that small or?
Well, even I believe that this dimension given for the soul is figurative in one sense, because you can't really measure the soul by material ruler or something like that. This is a two-dimensional, material measurement. So, but it's said like that. In comparison to the Supreme Lord, who is all-pervading, then the jiva is nothing. Huh? But when he develops a spiritual body, of course, then the two are relative again. Krishna is a certain size, and the devotee may be a certain size in relation to him. If they're Sakya, then they're more or less the same. If it's Vatsalya, then Krishna is smaller and the parents are bigger, like that. So it would depend on one's particular relationship with the Lord at that stage. But also, it's described that in the spiritual world, the jiva has the power to, it's called Satya Sankalpa. Anything he desires comes true. Of course, he cannot be like the Supreme Lord and create universes or whatever, but he can go anywhere in the spiritual world if he so chose to. He can manifest any form if he wants to. Huh? But generally, those who are fixed in a particular rasa do not desire to do so because they want to serve the Lord in that particular form. But some who are less fixed in rasa may like to change their bodies around and do different things and become an animal or a tree or whatever they want to do and play around a little bit. Huh? So it's possible to do that, but the more fixed you're in the rasa, then the less likely you would change your form. And that's for particular pastimes with the Lord, in service to the Lord.
Sadhana required to attain the various stages of the bhakti which you mentioned. The underlying thing is same, but I mean to say we need to do the sadhana and do the chanting, the association of the devotees and bring
To progress through these different stages, what's necessary?
is that the mercy of the Lord which you would go with?
Okay, so yeah, to progress through these different stages, of course, the watering process is there. We have the seed, then we water it, and it starts to grow. So the watering process is the processes of bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, deity worship, sadhu sangha, etc. So these are the things that nourish it. They have to be done properly. That is Sudha Bhakti. We don't mix it with other desires. So we do without any other desire than desire to serve the Lord. So we do these processes. That's the watering process. And gradually the growth takes place. So, of course, it's not solely the endeavor of the devotee. The mercy of the Lord is always there as a very important element. We see that the Nishta stage, the Lord is in the heart, Krishna is in the heart, and he destroys the anarthas, etc. So at all stages, we're getting the mercy of the Supreme Lord in the process of bhakti. Of course, as we get to bhava and prema, it becomes direct and personal. We get to see the Lord, and he directly interacts with the devotee. Other stages, we may not be aware of it, but the Lord is always there, and he's helping those devotees, and therefore, the process of bhakti is much quicker than the process of jnana or yoga or karma, which are, the Lord is not there. He's not personally interacting. But then that mercy of the Lord also comes through devotees. So through the devotees then, we get a channel of the Lord's mercy also. So that's also important. So mercy can come through the devotees of the Supreme Lord, and we continue the process of bhakti. And this, through that process, then gradually the plant grows.
I thought in certain places that, like the prema bhakta can always see Krishna at every moment. And I think in one slide you were saying that Krishna sometimes appears and then disappears.
Disappears, yeah.
So which one is it? And they see Krishna?
In one, it's a yes. Does the devotee in prema always see Krishna or not? It's a yes and a no, because I said there's meeting and separation. Obvious and separation, he's not directly seeing the Lord. In another sense, he is seeing the Lord because internally the Lord is with him. He's always thinking of the Lord, so therefore the Lord can have a manifestation. So We have the case of Krishna leaving Vrindavan and going to Mathura, and then everybody is separated from the Lord. But then there's some consolation because internally Krishna manifests himself, and they get a little satisfaction from that. But still, they want greater satisfaction of Krishna directly appearing before them, so they always hanker for Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. And eventually he does. So separation is always followed by meeting again. So yes, he is always there, and then in terms of pastimes, sometimes he disappears and then he manifests himself. So when we're talking about his appearance or meeting, we mean his direct presence or sakshatkar in front of the devotees. So that, according to pastimes, he will appear and disappear. And that's therefore all devotees, even when he doesn't leave Vrindavan. When Krishna goes out in the fields in the morning, then there's separation from the gopis and from the parents. And then they meet them. Krishna comes back in the evening, and then he's with them again. Or Krishna separates from the gopis after the Ras Leela, and he comes home. And then there's separation in the daytime, and the next evening he meets them again. So there's that type of separation and meeting again. Part of pastimes. So we get separation and meeting as, two parts of prema. And it occurs during the different pastimes and the daily pastimes. And then we get the long separation when Krishna goes to Mathura, and then later on he comes back. Okay. Hare Krishna.